Hello, welcome. My name is Gabriel, and it's been a minute. I haven't done a reading update for you guys in a couple months, and I have read a bunch of books. I didn't take very good notes, but I just need to make a video about them, talk about them while I still remember what they're about and what I thought about them. How's everyone doing? Don't ask me the same question. It's currently like 11:30 p.m. We're in a new location. You're in my living room. How's everyone doing? It's the day after my semester just ended. I took my last final yesterday morning. I passed. Let's just get into it. The list is all over the place. I read a lot of poetry and a lot of plays. You'll see. Number one, I read Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney, which I remember almost nothing about. Okay. Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney is about two women. They're friends. They used to date, but now they're just besties. And they meet a married straight couple. There's a man and a woman. They're in their 30s. They're married to each other. They become friends with these two women who are like poets or something. It's about two young friends who have affairs with each person in this married couple. I listened to this on audiobook. That's why I remember nothing about it. I'm not good with audiobooks. I will not remember a single detail. I can't say anything about this. I think I gave it 3 stars. I feel bad. I love Sally Rooney. I feel like I didn't give this one a proper shot. I just was listening to it on audiobook at work, and I remember I was in an awful mood. We're off to an awful start. Let's move on to the next book. I read Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which is a play by Tom Stoppard. So, if any of you are familiar with Hamlet, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are two friends of Hamlet who are sent in his place to deliver a message to someone. But they die, and this play is about their journey to deliver that message. It's very weird, classic absurdist theater, I think. I feel like I missed a lot by just reading it. I need to see it on stage. I should have taken notes on these. I didn't rate this one. It's just a cool play. It's an important piece of theater history. Check it out. Then I read The Language Archive by Julia Cho, and I love this play. Guys, oh my god. The Language Archives is about a linguist. He is currently in a failing marriage. That's just one of the plots. But at work, he is working to document the last remaining examples of this dying language. He has 2 people who are the last living people who speak it. They're a married couple, but they're fighting. And he needs to record the 2 of them conversing in this language if he wants to accurately document it. But they're fighting and they're refusing to speak to each other. And his assistant at work is in love with him, but he's married and he's just not in love with her. It's never going to work out. And it's this play about a bunch of people with so much love built up inside of them, and it's about language barriers. They just lack the vocabulary to accurately express what they need to say to each other. He cannot tell his wife accurately that he loves her, but she needs to hear those words from him, and it's very tense, but it's so beautiful, just this exploration of the limitations of language and doing your best to formulate an accurate representation of your feelings, even though that's kind of impossible. It's one of the most beautiful plays I've ever read in my life. I'm obsessed with it. We're finally moving into the ones that I kind of remember. Okay, Bright Half-Life by Tanya Barfield is the next play that I read. This is about 2 women who have a relationship with one another, and it follows them over the entire course of their relationship. It spans 50 years from the time that they are young all the way to the end of their lives or their time together. But it's not told in chronological order. In fact, it weaves in and out from scenes at an amusement park to them walking on the street, or them meeting at work, or years down the line after they've been married for decades. And it's really difficult to keep up with where they are exactly. You're just kind of getting little snippets of their love story thrown together. And it's kind of written like a poem, just these really important phrases and speeches that they give to each other kind of pile on together to create a really beautiful collage. After that, I read a novel. Crazy, right? I read Truth of the Divine by Lindsay Ellis. This is the sequel to Axiom's End, and it is the second book in the Numana series. And I love this book so much. You guys know that Axiom's End was one of my favorite books of 2020, and this was an excellent sequel. So the first book is an alien first contact story. Aliens have come to Earth. Humanity must now grapple with that knowledge. And it follows Cora, a woman in her 20s who has dropped out of a linguistics program, who ends up being the sole source of communication with one of these aliens. She has bonded with him and now serves as his interpreter. And in the second book, now that the public has been made aware of this alien presence on Earth, her role as the translator for this alien is much more important. She becomes a very public figure. And this book is just grappling with the political repercussions of humanity learning of the existence of other intelligent life in the universe, and dealing with how to define aliens as people, and what those laws which limit the personhood of aliens could then imply for the limitation of personhood of humans, of marginalized communities. This book was just so exciting. I really need to read more like sci-fi action thrillers. I gave it 4 stars instead of 5, just because, I don't know, while it was very fun, there was something at the very end where I just wasn't very happy with the plot choice that was made, even though I know that it makes sense and it's going to help the story in the long run as the series progresses. I just was mad about it. But this is a very good book. Please check out Axiom's End if you like aliens and fun. I keep saying fun. This is a pretty dark book. It's actually a lot more violent than the first one. The first one was more of just like a romp, and in this one things get very real and complex, and I cannot wait to see where the series goes. After that, I read American Primitive by Mary Oliver. These are poems. They are all about America. Kind of a lot about Ohio. Mary Oliver often explores her own emotional life through her experiences in nature, and this book is about nature in America, this very like primal, feral place, and her connecting with herself and with her past in nature in America, in the Ohio wilderness. I love Mary Oliver. I love her poems. I've never known really how to review poetry. Maybe I'll just read one of the ones that I like tagged here. Okay, this poem is called Web. So this is fear. The dark spider scuttles away over the underboards. I watch the blood bead on my skin, and I think rapidly. The last dollar, the last piece of bread, lightning sizzling under the door. Whether it hurts or not, I imagine it does. I remember a bat caught years ago, in the attic, how he tired among the swung brooms, not knowing we would let him go. I get up to walk to see if I can. So this is fear. The trapdoor unnails itself in the dusk. The curtains move, as though the wind had bones. After that, I read more poetry. Envelope Poems by Emily Dickerson. These poems were just little fragments of writing found on Poems by Emily Dickerson. The book like shows her envelopes here, and then it kind of formats them in a more legible way right there. These aren't very coherent thoughts. It's kind of like you're snooping on her desk. But it's just like a cool item to have. I've had this book for a long time, and I never really sat down to read it. But as you can see, I was just in a poetry mood, and I was like, I'll get this one out of the way too. While we're on the poetry shelf, I skipped one. I read If Not Winter, Fragments of Sappho, by Sappho, translated by Anne Carson. And these are beautiful. This is like the entire collected fragments of Sappho, the ancient Greek poet. And I'm just obsessed with Anne Carson as a translator. I am a very big fan of her Oresteia. So I'm happy to finally have gotten around to this. I'm just gonna read you some of the fragments because, again, there's no way for me to accurately review poetry. You just have to hear it and let it hit you. These are some of the ones that hit me. You came and I was crazy for you, and you cooled my mind that burned with longing. Sweet mother, I cannot work the loom. I am broken with longing for a boy by slender Aphrodite. Frequently, for those I treat well are the ones who most of all harm me. Crazy. You I want to suffer. In myself I am aware of this. There's all these beautiful little bits that are just broken up. You don't know what's been lost to time. And that's kind of part of the beauty of it. It's we have just these beautiful little bits, and the rest is left up to your imagination to fill in the blanks and just wonder what more beauty are we missing out on. Highly recommend this. Then I read My Wicked, Wicked Ways by Sandra Cisneros, and this is more poems about Sandra Cisneros finding herself as an adult woman. There's poems just kind of about her embracing her true self as an adult, embracing her sexuality and her beauty and her confidence. Here's one called 14 de Julio. Today, 14 de Julio, a man kissed a woman in the rain. On the corner of Independencia y Cinco de Mayo, a man kissed a woman. Because it is Friday. Because no one has to go to work tomorrow. Because, in direct opposition to church and state, a man kissed a woman, oblivious of the consequence of sorrow. A man kisses a woman unashamed, within a universe of two, I'm certain. Beside the sea of taxicabs on Cinco de Mayo, in front of an open-air statue, on an intersection busy with tourists and children. Every day, little miracles like this occur. A man kisses a woman in the rain, and I am envious of that simple affirmation. I, who timidly took and timidly gave. You, who never admitted a public grace. We, of the half-dark, who were unbrave. After that, I read Regarding the Pain of Others by Susan Sontag. I talked about this in my last video because I thought it was philosophy, and it kind of is, but it's actually a book about wartime photography. At the beginning of this book, Sontag talks about Virginia Woolf's idea of wartime photography, which is that any photograph of the violence of war should immediately turn the viewer into a pacifist, because you will see the destruction and the violence and you will say, this can never happen again, we can't fight any more wars. But she argues with that and talks about wartime photography as a tool for political motivation, and how a photo of violence is a very good tool for galvanizing the public against a common enemy. She also talks about how pictures have kind of replaced memories, in the sense that a picture of a battlefield will then become the defining picture in the public's mind of the war, even if that picture was completely staged. And how a lot of our most iconic images of wars and of history were staged, or at least have an extra narrative applied to them via the title or by the photographer, which wasn't actually the case in the moment. And those images shape the way that we think about history and about war itself. This was really cool. It was my first experience with Sontag's writing, and I am excited to check out more of it. Then I read another novel, Chronicle of a Death Foretold by Gabriel Garcia Márquez. So, years ago, a man married a woman, and then it was found out that this woman was not a virgin. And so, the brothers of that woman hunted down and killed the man who had taken her virginity. And this book is set years later, when a friend of the man who was killed comes back to town and is trying to chronicle all the details of the event. He wants to know what happened in the hours leading up to it, what was the immediate aftermath, and what has happened to all of the players involved in the years since. And it was very expertly crafted. Márquez does this fantastic thing where he can just say a person's name and give a few details about their home or about their job, and suddenly you know that this is a fully fleshed out person, and you can just feel that they have lived years on this planet. So he has just an incredible grasp of atmosphere and of place and of community. That being said, this book kind of just feels like a very long list. It's a very masterfully crafted list, but it's just a list of things where one thing happens and then another thing happens. And I know that in a sense that's every book, all books are just a list of events, but it was just a list. I don't know what else to say. It didn't affect me in any way at all. I'm sort of just working my way through Márquez's books. I can now cross this one off of my list. Take that as you will. After that, I read Blue Nights by Joan Didion, and This is probably the best book I've read since, like, the summer. It is so incredible, and it was while I was reading this book that I had the thought that, like, I don't want to read anything that isn't by Joan Didion. She just... Like, the fact that somebody can write like this makes me feel insane, because it's like, nobody else writes like this. So, like, why would I read anything else when this exists? Like, so, Blue Night is sort of a sequel to The Year of Magical Thinking, because her daughter ended up in the hospital around the same time that her husband died. And The Year of Magical Thinking is about the year after the death of her husband while her daughter was in the hospital. And this book is a memoir about the life of her daughter who passed away at the end of that year. And she just tells memories of her daughter's childhood and young adulthood and of her daughter's wedding. And she just takes all of these images from throughout their past and all of these phrases that her daughter said to her over the years. And she spins them and repeats them in such this, like, a powerful way, so that by the end of this book you have a really lovingly crafted, like, memory box and just a documentation that her daughter, Quintana, was here. She was alive, and she was really deeply loved. This book is so beautiful. I'm really glad that I came across it. After that, I read a very similar book, and yet an extremely unique book. It is unlike anything I have ever read in my life, and that is Knox by Anne Carson. So, a unique thing about this book is that it isn't a book, it's a box. You have to open it like this, and the pages are bound together, kind of like a zine. You have to, like, flip it open. And this book has a very fascinating story. So, Anne Carson's brother was estranged from her and her family for years. He had run away from home and was living in Europe, and when he died, it took weeks for the news to get back to her. And so, when he died, she didn't really know too much about the person that he was, and she just had all of these weird little fragments of his life over the years, of this few letters he had sent home, and then a few documents that his widow in Europe had sent her way. She also has this poem that she's been trying to translate for years, and that is Fragment 101 by Catullus, which is a poem from the perspective of a Roman citizen whose brother has died in the war. And this book is a collection of fragments of her brother that she has collected, and also an attempt to translate this poem about this Roman who has lost his brother. And on one side of every page is a fragment of her brother's life, or some words that she has written about him, and on the other side is the Latin word in the poem, and all of the possible meanings behind that word, and every possible way that she could translate it. So you work your way through this book, and you see her trying to create a fully realized version of this poem, and she's also trying to create a documentation of her brother and who he was to her. And you just have this beautiful epitaph by the end of it. It's literally a memory box in the way that Blue Nights is. And yeah, I just read back to back these two beautiful, lovingly crafted expressions of grief and documentations of people who are no longer here, but who are now immortalized in some way. It was really beautiful. And then to finish it off, I read Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. This is a little novella, and it's one of the most disturbing things I have ever read in my life. So it's about two women who meet online in some kind of early 2000s chat room. One of them is trying to sell her grandmother's apple peeler. It's a family heirloom. And she connects with a woman who is willing to purchase this apple peeler. And the two of them form a sort of bond over the internet in which the woman who was selling the apple peeler becomes financially dependent on this other woman. And it follows their very strange relationship as the two of them make agreements to have influence over the other's life. And it just spirals until the very end, where they've both done just really terrible, sickening things. And it's so bonkers. I can't even say how I feel about it or how I feel about the writing. It's so visceral and upsetting and effective, so in that sense it's good writing. I guess, but like, it's one of those books that's just so strange, and you don't even know how to put it on a scale and say, like, this is good writing, this was well written. It's just kind of there. And that's the last thing that I finished. It's been a couple of weeks because I've been focusing on finals. But yeah, that's it. I read a bunch of books, and I've now told you all about them. I'm sorry that it took me a minute to get into the groove of things. I just genuinely have no memory of Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. I really did that one dirty. I probably could have talked about it if I had done the Sally Rooney video that I had planned, but it's that one's not happening. I'm sorry. Nobody was holding me to that. Nobody was like saying, Gabriel, you have to make the Sally Rooney video. I just had a goal, and I am not going to see it through. I'm sorry. There are other writers whose entire works I am working my way through, who I will probably make videos about one day. I am making excellent progress on Joan Didion at the moment, and the Toni Morrison... I have 3 more Toni Morrison books that I need to finish before I can make my Toni Morrison video. I'm just holding off from reading those because I know once I have read those books, there are no more Toni Morrison books, and that's a very sad thought. I hope all of you survived your finals and that you are well and healthy right now, and I hope that you have a wonderful holiday season. I'm going to try and make my favorite books of 2021 video very soon, maybe even tomorrow. I literally have nothing to do for the weekend until my plane takes me back to Utah. I'll see you guys next time.